Hey everyone, thanks a lot for joining on Monday. As you know, we have Monday blues after the weekend, so really appreciate it. And yeah, today we're talking about scaling communities to be more inclusive. I have been a part of the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors program for a while now. I got in when I was in my freshman year, and now I'm in my final year. So my entire college life, I have been a part of this program. This was also the very first community that I got involved with. Now I'm involved with tons of communities from around the world, and like MLH, Major League Hacking, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, GitHub Campus Experts, and like open source communities in general. I even started my own community, and that's what this talk is about. I won't be talking much about me. I'll be talking more about how you can do the same. So how you can start your own community or college group or whatever. So yeah, I'm a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador from India, and I let me just share my screen and share a little bit about my community. I have a nice presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I would love if this is like a interactive session. It's asking me to make some permission changes. It's a new laptop, so let me try again. Can you share my screen? Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Scaling communities to be more inclusive.
Yeah, now is yes.
Okay, cool. So about me, I am currently in my senior year. I'll be graduating next year. I work as a developer advocate at CIVO, and I'm a CNCF ambassador. I'm involved in a lot of communities, Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors, GitHub Campus Expert. About my own community, I started Community Classroom because I wanted to provide courses and mentorship and spread about open source among students for free. So everything is free. We don't charge for literally anything. Any events I conduct, anything I conduct, literally everything is free. And the good thing about this is that, most of the things are on my channel. And what's fascinating is I gained like 100,000 subscribers in just 3 months because people really love the way I teach. So if you want to check out some like interview preparation courses or whatever, I'm coming up with some DevOps courses and stuff. So you can check it out, like the upcoming, what we have plans for the community. The whole idea of Community Classroom is just to spread about open source, and Microsoft itself is one of the largest contributors to open source projects, and yeah, that's basically what I wanted to do. So I had a vision, like I wanted to spread about open source in among students, because my college does not provide, let's say, more on-campus opportunities. So I had to go the off-campus route. And open source helped me a lot in it. Communities like Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors, GitHub Campus Experts, MLH, for example, CNCF, all of them have helped me quite a lot in my journey so far and all the opportunities I have gotten. So I never felt like I was missing out on anything. I never felt like I was not being successful enough or whatever because of these communities. So I owe everything to open source and communities, and definitely it can change your life. Just get involved and you'll learn a lot of nice things. So open source is great. You get real world experience. You get to work on amazing projects. This is me at KubeCon North America in 2019. It was a lot of fun, met a lot of amazing people, started contributing to Kubernetes and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much about me, and that's what I'm going to be sharing about today. So in this talk, as I always mention, it'd be great if we can have like an interactive session. So sorry, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat and I'll be answering those like in the end, or we can just have a nice little discussion. So what is a community? That's the first question that you should have in your mind when you're starting your own community or joining like an existing community, you want to scale it. So in order to answer this question, like you have to think about what are your community's shared struggles. Community is what? Like a group of people getting together, working towards something, and your community is defined by like what are the communities like shared struggles. So example, Community Classroom that I started, or the CNCF student community that I started. All of these are free. Like no one is going to charge you for anything. It's like totally open sourced. So the idea that I had was that, for example, CNCF student community, if I take an example of that, the idea was that there are so many open source projects in Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? So students find it a little bit difficult to get started, and that is not really like that is not how it should be, because open source is for everyone and every contribution counts. Kubernetes is the second largest open source project in the world after Linux, and it still attracts like so many new contributors. What if I told you like you don't even have to be like from a coding background in order to contribute? Even non-code contributions are valid. So that's what I had in mind. Like people find it difficult to get started with open source, so I started my community focused around that. So I provide like mentorship support and things like that. Other than that, I also saw that one of the more communities shared struggles were that they were lack of resources. So that's what we're trying to solve. The next thing you have to ask yourself is, what is your mission? What do you want to do? What do you want your community to be like when we're talking about a few years down the line? Missions of the community may change, but your overall vision should be the same. Cool. And the next thing is, what do members look to get out of your community? So when you start your community, you have to think about, why would anyone want to join? Why would people care? What are they going to get out of it, right? So that's also one more thing you need to think about. So be that mentorship or a community, like a learning environment, or if they're getting some opportunities or whatever, anything it can be. Okay, let's talk about communication. So we've discussed about communities, what do you have to keep in mind. One of the more important things is effective communication. So if you have like some barriers, because when we talk about underrepresented groups, one of the major blockers they face when getting involved in new communities is lack of effective communication. So let's talk about that. When we're talking about diversity and inclusion, we'll talk about future proofing later on. So you have to think about, when we talk about communication, who might be excluded from accessing the activities of your community, right? So for example, when I started, people were saying like, Kunal, can you please make the tutorials and all the content and everything in Hindi, which is the national language of India? And I was like, no, because then people outside India would be limited. Like they wouldn't be able to understand any courses I'm making or any events I'm conducting or whatever. So I thought like English as a universal language was a better choice. Obviously, Microsoft does this in a really amazing way. They have like sign language interpreters as well. They have like translations and all these other things. That's on a really bigger scale, and that's something like I have for my future plans. So you have to think about who might be excluded from accessing the activities of your community. And in other terms, it can be like for an in-person event, for example. So Linux Foundation has a lot of events, and they have they take into consideration like some people may not be able to travel due to like money restrictions or whatever before COVID, these things, right? So what they do is they have like diversity programs and diversity scholarships for students, for example, and underrepresented groups, need-based scholarships and things like that. And let's talk about like making community future-proof as well. So you have to think about like be that an open source project or your own community, you have to think about who is going to handle like after you have moved on, for example. So highlighting like future community leaders and giving them responsibilities, like dividing various tasks and things like that. You can make various teams. That way you can identify how to future-proof your community. Try to give roles as much as possible to other community members. So in open source as well, it's like not one person is managing it. It's like so many maintainers, and maintainers keep coming and keep going, but the project lives on. So that's how you make your community future-proof. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, when you're forming a new community, one thing I would like to recommend is form your community around people who are underrepresented in tech or in communities, because then they will feel like more welcomed. And it's also going to be very helpful for like people who are not, let's say for example, underrepresented in tech. So to sum up, forming communities around people who are underrepresented in tech in general can be a really good way. How to handle negative scenarios. A code of conduct, which we'll talk more about later, is crucial when you're scaling your community. When we talk about handling negative scenarios, then these things happen. I've been staffing at hackathons for a while now as an MLH coach, and sometimes we get negative scenarios and things like that. Rarely, but it happens in in-person events as well. So first of all, make sure everyone is feeling safe and they are feeling like they are getting heard. So make sure you take them to a private place and listen to both the parties, and then come up with the decision. But enforcing the code of conduct is crucial. And when we talk about negative scenarios, which we'll talk more about in the code of conduct, there should be like a point of contact at an event or in your community where you can report these such scenarios, right? Where people can report such things. But one more thing I would like to talk about is designing your community's needs. So there are two types of needs that are facilitated and needs that are not facilitated. So facilitated needs, for example, you're conducting an event for your community, And let me just hide this. Cool. So you're conducting an event for your community, and what happens is, let's say you you have some food items or whatever, like Microsoft provides us with that support. So they in the section they provide how many vegetarian items you want, how many non-vegetarian items you want, or whatever. So these are needs that should be facilitated when you're having your registration forms or whatever. There you can ask like, hey, would you require any special assistance or like travel assistance, for people who may be in wheelchairs or something like that. So these are needs that are facilitated. So try to see like what all different needs might be there via the registration forms or whatever, and like doing surveys and asking for feedback after the event so you can facilitate it in future events. Oftentimes it may be possible that needs may not be facilitated. For example, you may not have a feeding room and someone may need it, right? So in these scenarios, just be honest and upfront, like, hey, we are really apologizing for this. Try to see if you can make it happen, but if not, just make them assure them like, hey, I will try to facilitate it in the future events and we really apologize. Code of conduct, extremely important. It's basically a document that lists all the rules and how to be be a good person if you're getting involved in the community. Some basic human nature rules and also some community specific rules. Some community specific rules can be like you can't share about other like spam or whatever, can't self promote. Some communities may allow self promotion or whatever. So code of conduct is crucial, and make sure people abide by the code of conduct and are respectful for everyone. They are not discriminating or anything. And also make sure you have a point of contact in the code of conduct, because that is also very important. Like an email on a phone number. Like if you want to report a violation of a code of conduct, you can go over here. Cool. That's pretty much about it. You can connect with me on Twitter, but as I mentioned, I can definitely answer some questions right now, and like about open source or getting involved in communities. Anything you want, I can basically help out right now. So stage is yours. Feel free.
I think that you have one question I saw in the comments. Someone is asking when you start the web development course on your YouTube channel. Maybe it's not correlated that much to the presentation, but
it's not correlated, but that's why I would like to recommend, like, I'm doing a lot of things right now. So please have some patience and let's take it offline and let's not spam it like over here. But just have some patience. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it will definitely come. Web development is one of the fields for which you don't need to wait for my courses. On YouTube, you will find plenty. Free Code Camp is there, and so many other courses are available on YouTube for web development. So just best way to get started is just get started.
There is a new question. How does one with no experience in open source get started?
Cool. So what I would recommend is first thing you need for open source is project, obviously. And an organization and a community to be a part of. So you can go to GitHub, and over there you can explore all the repositories and stuff. That you can find projects according to your tech stack and interests. You can find on the trending repositories. Finding a project is not a big issue. People face issues when getting involved in communities. So one thing I would like to recommend is take a big project that is has a really active community, because open source is much more than coding. It's also about communities and community work, not more than just coding. The next step is getting involved. Try to use the project, try to see what it does, and get involved in the community. So for example, join the mailing list, and also join the public channel or whatever they may have. And such big communities that are really active in open source, they may also have their own office hours. So monthly or weekly they meet. So for example, Kubernetes has their own office hours. Anyone can join. You don't have to sign up or anything. Just join the mailing list. You will get a calendar invite. You can join. Just join the office hours and see what everyone is working on. For the initial 5-6 meetings, you will not understand anything, but that's okay. Just sit there and answer, look at questions and try to get involved. After that, on the GitHub, check out good first issues. So good first issues are basically issues that are really easy to get started with, and you can also start with issues that are non-code related, like documentation and stuff. At KubeCon, there was a talk called Rocking Non-Code Contributions. I was in that panel, so you can check that out, how to contribute in open source without any particular coding knowledge. And these contributions are also extremely important. It's not like it's not related to coding, so it's not important. No, It has a lot of value. You will get to learn a lot, and it's also pretty amazing. After that, just get involved in the channel. So it's like join the Slack channel or whatever. Then you can ask like, hey, I've been involved in communities right now. Do you have any beginner friendly issues I can work with? And if you want to get involved in the tech side of the project, you will have to study. So if you find yourself in a place where you don't know much about the project, well, you have to study about the project. So yeah, the best way to get started is just to get involved. Just get involved, and every single project has their own like opportunities and like ways to communicate and open issues or whatever. So once you get involved, the project maintainers and the community members, they will be able to guide you much more.
Yeah, I would just mention to here, because when I was in the first year of my faculty, I was doing some on open source projects on Mozilla. And yeah, like he mentioned, there is like open mailing list where you can subscribe and you can start writing to them. Or also they have some of the projects like Mozilla, I don't know which ones are still open, where they have also an application where you can fill out and you can say, okay, I am technical person, I know this language, I can do, I don't know, debugging, or I can do writing documentation, depends on what type of, how to say, profile you are, you can engage in those opportunities. But there are a lot of, because open source are, like its name says, everyone can join and everyone can contribute. Depends how much time you have and how much you want to get involved. We have next question, which asks, are there some resources to getting started with open source? Well,
yeah, not really as such. It's more of a hands-on approach. So there can be many guidance videos and everything you can see, but it's not going to tell you anything different than what I already told you. You can check out, just get involved. I would highly recommend be active on Twitter, because most of the open source communities and developers who can help you out are active on Twitter. They're not much active on LinkedIn. So developer communities on Twitter are much better. So get involved over there. And there's no such course or anything you can do. Just check out Git and GitHub. Like that's extremely important. I did a video on that. People really loved that, so you can check that out. But yeah, I mean, the best way to get started is just to get started. There's not a single like roadmap or a course or anything that I can share with you that will help you. No, just get involved and you will find your way yourself. It's more on the practical side. Like, it doesn't matter how many courses you see or whatever. If you don't get involved, you will not get involved.
Okay, let me see. There is, how do I start an open source community at my university?
That's a great point. That's a great question. So you can open source your own projects. You can start your own open source projects and get your juniors contributing to it. If you're conducting a workshop, then try to put open source in it. So for example, you're conducting a workshop and you can be like, hey, you want the code for this workshop? Here's it on GitHub. You can check it out on GitHub. You can open source your own class projects. For example, you can collaborate using Git and GitHub on your school projects. So we all know that everyone has to submit like a final year project. You can collaborate using GitHub on that. So we do it. That's how you can enforce open source practices. But yeah, try to get involved in various communities and try to, so for example, Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. Microsoft is a global community, but you are the face of your own community. And you can conduct open source events and preach about open source software in your own campus and among your group.
Okay, we have, let me go to the next question. How people earn by open source?
You can definitely do that. If you're doing great work in open source, then people can sponsor you on GitHub. There are many open source programs that are internship alternatives, like Google Summer of Code, Outreach, Linux Foundation, Major League Hacking Fellowship, Microsoft Reinforcement Learning Program. This is also an open source program. So your end-term motivation should not be the stipend they provide, but the spirit of open source. But yeah, you can definitely earn from open source as well. One more thing I would like to mention is many companies have their own open source developer advocates, so you can get paid to work at open source projects. The role I'm doing right now, developer advocacy at CIVO. My role is also getting involved in open source communities and working on open source projects and stuff. Red Hat, for example, has most of their projects are like open source, which their engineers work on. Still, they earn like so many dollars, every year in revenue, because many companies depend on open source projects. So in Kubernetes also, you'll find many maintainers are from Google, Microsoft, all these other tech companies, Red Hat, VMware, companies like VMware, they are like fully like, they have remote work culture. People contribute to open source in their own work time as well, because these companies depend on these open source projects. Hence, their employees, they encourage them to contribute to open source. So as a job as well, you can be open source developer advocate and open source contributor as well. Yeah, that's totally you can do it.
I want here to mention that there is also from Google that you mentioned, they have, I think during the summer, it's called like something Google Summer of Code, where you can, like students, it's open for students, can apply. There is like organization that have a lot of projects, and you can apply for some project, and if they select you, you get you work like 3 months with a mentor, of course, and you get paid like, I don't know, $5,000 during, if you finished these 3 months of. So that's a good start, I would say, if someone wants to go in that way.
The good thing is that Google Summer of Code is now not just open for students, even working professionals can apply. You just have to be 18 years of age, and this is the new rule that they came out with this year. So yeah, now you can apply even if you're not a student.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. Okay, we have we have a lot of questions. Just find the next one. Did you find it hard to learn at the beginning?
Yeah, but that was a good thing. I straight away in my freshman year started contributing to Kubernetes Java client by Red Hat middleware. So Red Hat middleware, if you check out their projects, they're very overwhelming and very huge and scary. So for a freshman, it was obviously very scary, but I had nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. It's not a give or take relationship. It's open source. Do it at your own time. If you make mistakes, no one cares. They won't be like, what's the worst thing that could happen? They will not merge your code. That's the worst thing that can happen. So no one is going to complain to you or whatever. It's totally out and open. Community follows the code of conduct. They know everyone is learning. And that's why I was not scared. Like, what's the worst that could happen, right? No one is going to fire me. I'm not an employee there. So it's a great learning opportunity. I took it as it is, a learning opportunity. So I learned on the go and I started contributing, like some basic code sample, grammatical mistakes, errors, documentation, then adding some examples and some test cases. Then I moved on to bigger contributions because I already had experience with smaller contributions.
Yeah, that's good. Another one asks, please share your journey of open source from starting. I would say maybe in short sentence.
That's it. I started contributing to Kubernetes Java client, and I actually forgot. I did a lot of it. So I started contributing to Kubernetes Java client, and then I was a Google Summer of Code student with the same project. Then I mentored at Google Code-In, which was a program for school students by Google, open source. Then I contributed to Google Summer of Code as a mentor at Red Hat twice. Then I contributed to Facebook open source, the Jest framework, by the testing framework, JavaScript testing framework by Facebook, doing the Major League Hacking Fellowship. Then I contributed to CNCF projects on monitoring domain. And then I started the open source communities like CNCF Students Group, and got involved in the Kubernetes marketing SIG, like communication SIG. So if you don't know what a SIG is like a special interest group. So I'm mainly involved in that. And I recently became a CNCF ambassador. So I basically spread about open source communities and stuff. Similar thing that I'm doing right now, telling you all about open source. That's basically my journey right now. Yeah.
I would ask you if it's not hard, maybe not now, but after the presentation, to put some of those, competitions or opportunities that you mentioned. Maybe someone would want to Google it and maybe participate.
I actually made a video on this. I made a video on 20 plus open source programs you can apply to. Let me just share that video itself.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Where is it? 25 plus open source programs you can apply to. If you check out the description, you will find the links as well. Over here, I've just shared it.
Perfect, thank you. There is another question, but it's not correlated. I am going to read it and maybe we can both answer it. Sir, can anyone learn Kubernetes if doesn't know web development?
First of all, you don't have to call anyone sir. Even the most senior people will call them by their names in the community. The main respect comes from like your work and your ethics and just being a good person. So don't have to call anyone sir. You can call us Kunal and stuff. Answer is yes, you can. Prerequisites include Linux basics, commands, networking basics, and about containers. learn about all these things. Don't need to be an expert in these things, just basic understanding is fine. Then jump into Kubernetes. Kubernetes, I can share some resources if you want. Um, I'll always share free resources. I'll never share paid courses. So one YouTube channel is there, Tech with Nana. They have some amazing resources. Kubernetes documentation, katakoda.com, and CEO Academy. All of these are free. You don't have to add any credit card or whatever. Just sign up and start learning.
Perfect. The next one is, since we are all students and we would like to create a community on our campus, how do we utilize the help of the faculty? Is it possible to get professors and university to help?
Yeah, you can ask them help in terms of like sharing it about in the official college communities. One thing I would also recommend is get involved with other college communities. Your college would definitely would need approval for events and like rooms and stuff that you would require, halls you would require. So obviously you need permission for your college facilities over there. Try to explain your motives, and one thing that college facilities really want to see is what outcomes are there, right? So like what are you going to do to help the college facilities or whatever. So you can share about these things. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Next one is, do you have a personal open source project at the moment that you would recommend to us?
No, not really. I would recommend just directly jump onto the bigger projects because they are beginner friendly as well, and you will get to learn a lot of nice things. My personal projects I would not recommend contributing to. It's yeah, just directly jump onto nice projects. It will give you much more exposure.
Okay, perfect. Next one is, which one to choose, new or old open source project as a beginner?
Does not matter. Community should be active.
So to find the project where community is active, very active.
Yeah, just community is active and the project is actually being used by people. It's not like deprecated or whatever, and you're learning something new. That's enough. Yeah.
Okay, I'm a fresher and I have no idea where to start from. I know like 3 programming languages.
What was the last part?
Sorry?
What was the last part of the question?
I'm a fresher and I have no idea where to start from.
I know like 3 programming languages.
Yeah, and
sure.
That's all.
Just start data structures, algorithms, do some lead code questions, because if you're a fresher, you'll be applying to internships and stuff. Even if you apply to like Microsoft or Amazon or all these other big tech companies where every student dreams of applying to, they'll ask you some lead code questions and stuff like problem solving skills. Everyone asks this. Other than that, that's one side. So preparing for your interviews. The second part is having your personal brand, develop a profile. So if you apply to many remote work companies or whatever, they're also amazing. And I'm working at one right now. They don't ask you about problem solving skills. They focus more on your open source, like developer profile and your portfolio. Try to build that, get involved in open source, and it will definitely help you shape your resume.
Perfect, yeah. Next one is, just like Google Summer of Code, is there any program conducted by Microsoft?
Reinforcement learning code, it's in the link that I shared of 25 programs you can apply to. Reinforcement learning program there is by Microsoft. It's not that popular, and I don't know why, because it's pretty amazing. So check it out.
Perfect. Do you have experience in developing artificial intelligence that will generate music?
Microsoft has some cognitive services. Check it out. AI cognitive services. You can check that out.
Yeah, they have a lot of things like this where you can use already made some things that you can make it easier to accomplish your idea. Okay, I don't know, this is a question. I just started contributing to a material UI open source project, but most of the time I don't understand the code, or am I stuck in some places? How to solve that?
Ask questions. That's the only way to get solved. Stack Overflow, Google, research, ask questions again. It takes some time. It will not have an overnight, but to answer your question, ask questions to the community members. Don't ask questions like to me. I don't contribute to material UI. I don't know which issue you're talking about, so I can't help you. But the maintainers of the project can help you. So ask questions in public, in the mailing list or Slack channel or whatever they have.
Yeah, there is no stupid question, so just ask because...
Exactly, yeah, just ask questions. Yep. But before asking question, also Google yourself and ask good questions. So don't just say, I'm not understanding this. Try to frame your question like, I'm not understanding this. I tried this and then I Googled this and this is what I got and this is what I ran and still I'm not able to resolve this. Now they know what you have already done. So make it easier for them to help you. If you don't provide enough context, they will most of the time ignore your message. Like they will not reply much because they are also doing it on their free time. So try to ask better questions.
More specific, I would say. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Can you apply if you have little or no background in coding? I guess this is correlated to Google Summer of Code. Let me just read the name. Irena Latinovska. Can you just confirm? Yes. Would you like to answer it?
With Google Summer of Code as well, the one thing I would recommend with GSOC is don't worry about Google Summer of Code. Because GSOC isn't about getting selected, it's about staying with the organization after the GSOC period is over. So there's not really a major benefit you will get out of Google Summer of Code that you can't get without Google Summer of Code. Obviously, you'll get a nice stipend, you'll get certificate from Google and a nice little mentorship program or whatever. But you can even contribute if you get rejected in Google Summer of Code. And GSOC is not the end of the world. There are literally 25 plus programs that I just shared with you. So if you get rejected in Google Summer of Code, apply to other programs or whatever. So do your best. If you have the motivation of contributing to open source and the community members see that, then they will get, like, your chances of getting selected will increase. I made a detailed video on this as well with someone from the Julia community. So you can check that out. But some tips I'd like to give you is just start contributing early. That's the first tip. The second tip is if you're applying to a project that already has a lot of students interested in it, then obviously the competition increases. So try to apply to a difficult project where not many people are contributing to, not many students are contributing to. That way less students will apply to that project, less the competition will be, and your chances to get selected will increase, and you will also learn a lot of nice things. But in the end, your motivation should be being an open source contributor and not Google Summer of Code.
Yeah, I will add here that don't hesitate, or how to say that you don't have experience, apply, because Google Summer of Code is happening every year. You can apply every year. And I want to mention, I don't know if that's the situation now, but when I was applying, there were a lot of different kind of of open source project. I mean, mostly of them are coding, 90%, but you find projects that are not coding. I'm just throwing, because there is documentation writing, I'm not sure, analysis, maybe Kunal knows more. So feel free to take a look, and if you are not that maybe in coding, try to apply to whatever you want there. Also, you can apply, I think, to more projects on the Google Summer of Code, and if on one of those pick you, then you're okay. If not, try again or try with next one.
Also, for documentation, there's a special program, Google Season of Docs. So check it out.
Oh, I didn't know this one.
It's just for documentation, just like Google Summer of Code, but for documentation.
Because it's not that easy to write documentation, even if it's look like that. Okay. Could you explain more thoroughly how can someone contribute to an open source project if they have no background knowledge in coding? I mean, more or less, we covered this one.
We covered this.
Yeah, so try find Google some. Maybe you can Google the projects that Kunal shared in the video, or just write on the Google open source project where you can contribute. I know that because I was part of Mozilla, has a lot of projects to contribute, but just as an opinion. And what I would suggest is go to the mailing list, subscribe, and start asking. Or even they have, I know for Mozilla, they have open calls, like you can register and they will get to you like, hey, you want to contribute, what part, and you make a profile like that, and then you start to contribute. There is a lot of different ways of contributing, like coding, like finding bugs, like doing with graphics. And also you can, if you don't do this, you can also have like localization to translate the program in your own language.
Yeah, that's a lot of communities are doing that.
Yeah, we also have here one that in Macedonia, but I'm not sure if how much is active or in this currently. Yes, I'm just talking for the localization of the Mozilla, not for the other. Okay, please also share resources for no-code contribution for Kubernetes. Oh, this is too specific, I would say. I'm not sure.
I shared it.
Okay, okay. Check the links and you will find the resources.
I shared non-code guide over here. Yeah.
How long do you study all day?
Right now, not so much because right now I'm applying, but study never stops. Like learning never stops as a developer, and even in DevOps, so many tools come out every year, every like year and stuff. No many announcements you have to keep track of. So I'm up to date, and I try to learn when I get time. But yeah, when I was studying, like when I was not working or whatever, it depends. Like everyone has their own bandwidth. So what I would recommend is don't worry about like how many hours I study. Like you can, as long as you're getting the output and achieving your target and not burning out, you should be fine. Because everyone learns at a different rate. So
it's different, but I will agree that, I mean, especially if you work in IT, I would say that, learning never stops because every year, or not every year, every month there is coming new version or new technology that you need to implement or to learn. So you need to be prepared for those kind of like always learning. Okay, are there any questions? For now, as I can see, we already covered most of them. Let me see. Oh yeah, there is Kubernetes there in Google Summer of Code? I would say depends. If the organization have a project they are put at, check every year.
CNCF takes part in Google Summer of Code, and CNCF contains a lot of projects. So it's like Google Summer of Code, and CNCF takes part in that, and a lot of other projects take part in CNCF. So it's like one more layer. So CNCF definitely takes part. I'm not sure if they did like last year or not, but you can go to CNCF/mentoring repository. CNCF is a GitHub organization. Mentoring is the repository name. There you will find all the information about all the open source programs CNCF takes part in.
Okay, let me check. We have a little more questions. OS compiler, which is the most important topic? It's not correlated.
It's not a this or that, not correlated much. Depends on like what you're doing.
Yes. Next one is
Civo Academy is for code contributions. Yeah, it can definitely help you in that. It's more like a complete Kubernetes course. One of the resources I shared. So if you want to learn about Kubernetes and stuff, you can check it out. It will definitely help you in code contributions as well. I'm doing C++ then DSA. What do you suggest after that? I'm in first year. I would recommend get involved in some development. So learn about like web development or something and contribute to open source and keep practicing your data structure skills.
Okay.
How can commerce students do open source? You can do open source in the same way. The tips we shared were not just for computer science folks. Anyone can get involved.
Okay. Do we have any more questions?
That is it.
I guess, yeah. I think you already shared your. Oh, yeah, there is one more. Can you contribute to automation scripting open source? Yes, I would say.
Yeah, you can.
If there is a project,
just find the project.
Yeah. There is a lot of projects and on different technologies and things. So if the project is working with that, definitely.
Yeah.
As I was talking, you already shared your Twitter and YouTube channel. So if everyone has question or wants to learn more, please go and take his Twitter and YouTube channel. And if there is no questions, I will hear. We can stop the presentation for this one. Thank you very much, Kunal, for your presentation and for your experience that you shared with all the questions that were asked.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
I hope that we're gonna have another presentations or something in the future, and good luck with your open source projects, and someday you to have one big and active open source community and project.
Most definitely. Keep up the good work, everyone, and have a great rest of the event. Some amazing talks I saw lined up. So, yeah,